Messieurs, bonjour, merci de participer à cette
So thank you for taking part in this roundtable. I introduced you briefly, but maybe you can introduce yourself again, a bit more in details to describe your scope and present your organization. Pierre-Marie? Sure. I'm Pierre-Marie Laure. I'm currently the director for cybersecurity at Framatome. Framatome, no need to introduce them. We produce systems that are the heart of the nuclear power plants in France and abroad.
Thierry?
Thierry? Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Thierry Manciot. I'm in charge of cybersecurity for manufacturing and supply, so all the plants, basically, and distribution for drugs at Sanofi in the world, and in charge of cybersecurity as well for the network.
Jean-Dominique.
Jean-Dominique. I'm Jean-Dominique Delot. I'm CISO at Total Energy. We do energy a little bit everywhere in 130 countries around the world for renewable or carbonated products. We do procurement, we do loads of things. Dimitri?
Good afternoon, my name is Dimitri van Zandvliet. I'm the cybersecurity director for Dutch Railways, and we've been riding since 1839. And Dutch Railway in general has been riding for 200 years. 1825 is when it started, so and we are the little brother of SNCF. Hey, my friend.
And John?
Hi, bonjour. I'm Gemitech. I'm the CEO and founder of the company. So we do cybersecurity on chips. So for example, that's one of our products. We provide from root of trust all the way to crypto accelerator, all the way now to the post-quantum cryptographies.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, quand on a préparé cette table ronde, messieurs...
So when we prepared that roundtable, guys, you said cybersecurity has to bring performance and innovation to the business, obviously, and so we will go back to that. With you, Thierry, you also said cybersecurity has to be high performance as such. Let's start with that viewpoint, and we'll move on later on with the rest. Sure. So when you talk about cybersecurity as a catalyst for performance and innovation, we expect cyber to be high performance and innovative. What is performance cyber? It's difficult to answer. We all have our own answer to that. In any case, from my point of view, we consider that it's high performance when it's focused on data, basically, with the ability to collect a lot of data, whether on systems, networks, application, and so on, in order to assess and measure in real time the whole of the elements, cyber elements associated with those various areas. And so the objective is to measure the performance. We do it for each one of our plants with a certain number of KPIs that we publish that are updated every day or on a regular basis anyway, that are published every month so that we can assess the performance of each one of the plants while enabling each one of them to compare. So it means it's a commitment for all players based on those indicators, and so we can trigger then the remediation plans and the approach to improve security. So it's really about through data where there's no questionnaire. I never work with surveys or things like this. That's my it's only operational data to measure how we improve in terms of performance. And then just one last thing regarding innovation as well. So what I described is what we call the security data. So it's 150 billion of data. So it's a data lake, basically. And we are joining also the first GenAI functions. The objective is to enable our users, our application owners, basically, to easily challenge the cyber state of their arms and have a feedback on remediation options. So we are also experimenting. GenAI is really still very recent, but it's important because we can understand and then we can better tackle those issues and of AI in a proper business project. Who wants to react? Yeah, I always agree with him anyway, so no problem. Yeah, no, but I believe that innovation is always, like it's so commonplace. You cannot say nothing is invented, but innovation for the sake of innovation is just trendy. I try to avoid being trendy, in fact. But in terms of industrial security and performance, the first performance is that any attack shouldn't have any impact on the business. This is the #1 mission and the only one that's worth it. Then the way you do it, the way you make sure that in industrial sites that have to face, histories, in heavy industry, we have, how can I put it, segmentation? How can we make sure that we bring more and more value in detecting and preventing while trying to block as much as possible, because if you block the safety controls, that's terrible. So try and really implement different layers of security on industrial sites more and more efficiently. And then there's a challenge, which is that more and more plants are more and more digital, and so they need more and more to go down from IT, data, GenAI, whatever. It's on the OT layers, so it has to do with the culture from our INC friends. They don't like changes, and so for us to try and be sure that in these parts, which will be at the heart of the plants, these new processes can be done in a secure way to see whether we have to open more flows. Should we do processing or GenAI in the cloud or only on-prem because it's better when it's on-prem? So you have to answer all these questions business by business. I believe the role of cyber is to enlighten the business on their decisions, to say, right, in this case, there will be a risk, we shouldn't go for it. And in this case, you have a choice. Either we work like this, either we work like that. And this is those things that make things more and more interesting as far as I'm concerned. Pierre-Henri, you wanted to react on this data dimension at the heart of cyber? Sure, data, and standardization as well. Because data is even better when you can structure it and you can standardize it. There's a real issue about that. In terms of practices, we improved a lot in terms of cyber security thanks to standardization. In terms of our methods, documents, we were supported by GenAI, as you mentioned, Dominique, which means that in some cases we can save 50% of items on operations that we have to standardize in terms of control command systems that are different from one country to another. So in that respect, it's a huge performance aspect because we can save time. We can also simplify work for the engineers that are there to do cybersecurity and not documentation. So it's a real benefit for our customers as well. Gentlemen, Dimitri, John, who wants to go first?
Yes, I think it's very interesting that the gentlemen are talking about how to achieve business cases. And to make sure that you achieve your revenues and your ROI, for example, we also look at 3 dimensions of the cyber spectrum. So the first one is the threat landscape, which is getting worse and worse. I read this morning that Russian railway was being attacked, and they have a standstill at the moment. I also see a lot of attacks coming from financially driven parties. There's a lot of DDoS in the railway sector, and now with the NATO summit in the Netherlands, we are being looked at. So people are trying to block the services. The other dimension is the legislation. So whenever you do your business case, you need to look at the new laws like the NIS2, for example. We will talk about that more in depth. But if you start doing your business case development, all those aspects need to be taken into account from the start by design and by default. So it's very important that you don't only look at the data, as you said righteously, but to achieve your business case, you need to start from the left, shift left, and take along the cybersecurity when you do your innovation.
Okay, John?
Yeah, so I believe that the cybersecurity are sort of pushed by two ways. The first one will be applications, and the other one will be the standardizations. So when we talk about, even nowadays, we talk about the post-quantum cryptographies, it's also pushed by the NIST, so they standardized it last year. And now we're getting more customer requests coming out from these sites, but that's also the work coming out from the standardizations. So the importance for that is definitely strong, and also that's directly related to how many business cases and applications that we can put on.
Oui, allez-y.
Just regarding, so I agree with Pierre-Marie about a lot of things that he said in terms of compliance with regulations. No problem. There's a law, you comply with it. But if companies like us have to reach the NIST, well, in fact, we are talking about serious matters, and it's not the case for Sanofi or Framatome, but really, we really have to think about these new regulations that exist, so we apply them, but will it not bring people to ask more questions, to know whether their Excel is blue, red, green, or whether a hacker from Russia will be able to enter a server to, implement Triton. So I'm much more interested in the second question than the first one. So the first one is just administration. We have to ask the right questions. So we have to remain reasonable, comply with the law, do the checks, everything, follow the checks, no problem, compliance, but mainly be careful because hackers go further and further in the OT layers. They are smarter and smarter. They go to the chips, like John said, in the chips, in the systems with USB that is not checked properly. We'll have issues about OT because more and more IT becomes more and more difficult to hack. And so the strategic interests mean that neutralizing companies will be a real challenge. So I'm just saying to all my friends, great, let's go for NIST 2, but let's not believe that because we have this bench, we are secured. So we'll go back to this regulation dimension a bit later. But with you, Thierry, I want you to go back to the shapes that innovation coming from cybersecurity can bring to the business. I believe that it's already what we started sharing together. Cyber has to be really close to the business, and it should contribute to improving what we can call resistance on the value chain. So this is how we can contribute to bring in innovation. And to share what we are doing at Sanofi, this is an approach that I initiated a few months ago now. I have an approach that is end-to-end value chain, so products. So we manufacture products, and we look at the products that are the most critical and analyze and modelize all the elements that are related to the value chain for these products. So these are systems, apps, assets, suppliers, obviously, that contribute to this value chain. And what cyber brings is, in fact, end-to-end the ability to manage, well, we do it in different ways, with scoring, it doesn't matter, but from the protection elements all the way to the resilience and recovery part. So we also take into account the ability of this value chain to react adequately and in case of cyber attack. And the fact that we have this approach regarding the business means that we are stronger, and businesses can innovate and guarantee continuous activity. So for me, this is really, well, it's really looking at the cyber stakes regarding the business stakes and cyber performance as well. Pierre-Henri?
Je reprends sur le fil sur l'enjeu performance et innovation.
In terms of performance and innovation, I believe that in our activities, we really have this dimension. So showing that cyber is an investment and not a cost, showing that this investment is worth it, and we do it based on KPIs, showing that cyber can innovate for itself and for businesses. Innovate for itself, for example, we mentioned what we can do in our own activities in terms of productivity gains and support to innovation. We work a lot, again, with businesses. We developed, for example, detection systems, which mean, this was not the number one objective, but businesses could get information about the systems that they needed, and they couldn't get this information before. So cyber, in this case, helped in that respect. And so I believe that we are also business enablers. So we support the economic models. At Framatome, it's even more true because we had to secure technological breaks that we wanted to be sovereign. And so we went all the way to buying some companies that are now part of our solution, that are embedded, onboarded in our core business. So we developed the economic model all the way to bring performance, again, for cyber, but also for businesses. John?
So, yeah, we spoke about the costs, and the cybersecurity is supposed to be a cost, it's supposed to be an investment. One of the biggest reasons we have customers, they're AI companies, and the most important assets to them is actually their AI models. Nowadays, there's a lot of AI models we'll be implementing on the edge sites, and that will sort of help to get in high risk of reverse engineering and lose all their critical assets. That's where our company products focus is actually to help on protecting the AI model, combining with the devices, for example. But looking on forwards, we fully agree with that. The cybersecurity side is getting more important because all the data model that you protect, it's extremely important.
Dimitri?
Yeah, I fully agree that the value chain idea is very important, and the supply chain that comes with it as well. So I can give an example where 2.5 years ago we had a provider that did surveys for us for the travelers that had traveled with the train, and there were millions of surveys being done. And the provider had a provider that was being breached, and all the data was being stolen, exfiltrated, and was being sold on the dark web. And we had to inform 870,000 travelers that, you know, there was a breach, not with us, but with the provider, and the data was on the dark web, and we didn't know exactly what data it was. So it was a pretty tough situation at that moment. And then we decided, you often need a wake-up call. We decided to set up a new department for supply chain risk management. So we also do the checks and balances with our suppliers, but we also set up a new department on cyber threat intelligence, an OSINT department. We are looking at the dark web. We are looking at domain information that is being sold, and the combination of that is actually helping us a lot. So being more threat-driven is also what is required in this day and age.
Juste pour compléter ce que...
Just going back to what you just said, Dimitri, I believe that the risk for suppliers is one of the major stakes for supply chain. And so just one element, additional element, the implication of the procurement, which is not easy, but means that we can tackle suppliers' risks overall. So we see that for some dimension, they do it not badly. Sometimes it's not so much the case. And for the cyber dimension, we have huge efforts to make. In any case, this is what we want to do at Sanofi. We have dozens of suppliers, and what's important is to identify those that are really key for business. And let me go back to the value chain. And these ones, we shouldn't miss them. We have to make sure that they have the right level of cybersecurity and maturity. It doesn't mean that nothing will happen, clearly, but all the same, we have too many suppliers, whether small or big, but sometimes it's smaller ones where we have issues and we struggle. So the approach for us is not to exclude them. If they are critical for business, we have to work with them, and we have to assess with them their progress plan and support them in their plan, because, again, they are key for our value chain. So, but in any case, having the assessment and the global assessment is not enough of the level of cyber maturity, but this is a prerequisite for us that is essential. And so involving procurement is key as well. I agree with everybody on securing the supply chain, but if we want to grow suppliers as well, I mean, we are talking about OT. So we have a lot of suppliers of boxes, whatever, that tend to be quite slow towards modern cybersecurity. So the fact that we, so when we buy big equipment, we control the cyber safety so that the equipment is secure, and the way that they do cybersecurity means that we can work, rather than saying, well, this one is nice, but no, we won't redo an industrial site every year. So, we have, major shutdowns every 7 years, but there's, for 7 years, cybersecurity has to be there. And suppliers, I think, have to help us more because we feel that, it's always commercial, but we have to work better together to have equipment that is safe and have updates that take into account the cybersecurity needs, and also something that is key for me, the acceptance of the cybersecurity tools. That is to say, we have a market, OT market, that is becoming more and more complex, where other vendors understood that we needed detection layers, so they put EDR something, antivirus stuff, no names here, but you know what I mean. And so maybe in our company, we'd like to not have 12 antiviruses and 14 EDR, and so maybe we didn't qualify the other EDRs as well, but we feel it's important that people open their eyes on, to try and help us describe this EDR. I started implementing some of them to really have things that are modern and safe. Otherwise, we'll stick to OT that will be obsolete and it will be stale. For me, it will be too old, and we should really try and improve with this equipment to really secure our companies, rather than thinking, well, you bought it 15 years ago, well, deal with it, it's not my problem, and I don't want to see any EDR because my contract doesn't include that. Yeah, going back to what you just said, because this is, probably in the audience, you must have heard difficult conversations with vendors. You're absolutely right. The idea is that suppliers should, well, for industrial solutions on the market, they should manage to offer solutions that are compatible with the standards of the company. So no way are we gonna install an EDR that is not the company's one, or antivirus or whatever. So it means that you have to have those discussions, which are not easy, and obviously there's a way of doing it. You have to describe the environment so that it's compatible, but the position of the flyers saying, if you install your own EDR, we won't support you, this is unacceptable. Did you hear that as well? Yeah, sure. And we might go back to that, but one of the challenges to bend the suppliers is to be very much connected with the business when there's call for tenders, because there are call for tenders, especially on major projects, and being able to leverage this collaboration and say to the business, if the supplier doesn't comply with the standards, we won't go for it. And we did it before, and we managed to ban suppliers, which for years and years explained that it wasn't possible, but as part of a big project that was very strategic, in fact, it became possible. So you see, at some point, we have to switch the trend, and we have to be a little bit more challenging with our suppliers. But you cannot do it on your own. It has to be cyber with business. Pierre-Marie, you wanted to say something? So whenever possible, I suggest that we should take proactive action in favor of performance and innovation, because in any case, we will have to at some point. So for example, my experience in the past when I was a manager in cybersecurity at ATP, I looked at cybersecurity in the call for tenders, not in France, but everywhere in the world. And in this case, the fact that cybersecurity, when it's well structured, can bring value and bring an additional weight to the offer of the company for which we work. So this is important. So in any case, it grows everywhere in the world at international level, and I believe we have to support this in a proactive way. Same thing for innovation. We have to think about, seeing the percentage of your CapEx or OpEx you want to dedicate to R&D, especially on the notions of quantities. How can you integrate Kyber, dilithium, and others? I believe you have to think about it, because innovation is there and practices evolve, and also because threats evolve as well, whether you like it or not. We have to be ahead of the game. So this is the promise that we have made to our companies. So Dimitri, on the issue of suppliers, what can you add for vendors?
Well, I just What I think is combining a couple of thoughts as I'm speaking. I think 20 years ago we said data is the new gold. Now storing data is actually the new uranium. So you have your data, it can be very powerful, you correlate it, but if you store it too long, it can become very toxic. It needs to be encrypted, it needs to be dealt with, you need to take it away. And the other thing is, being innovative is also about bringing trust. So trust is actually the new gold. Data is not the new gold. Trust is the new gold. And I think especially so we are doing B2C and B2B business, driving people, bringing business card to business. But trust in the end, I think, is imperative. Trust that the business that we deliver is safe. Safety comes first. But trust also for the travelers that their data with us is safe. So I think one of the most important aspects in the near future, also when you are using, you talked about Gen AI, when you are using AI in the future, that you use it in a trustworthy way. So I think we need to focus more on the trust that we deliver within the business case, and that's very important.
John?
From the supplier side, I think there's a lot of things now involving with geopolitics issues. To be able to control your supplier chain, to be able to know where your product goes, now becoming important. Because that's sort of involved with a lot of more issues like counterfeiting problems and more, especially issues coming out from the control for the governments to be able to know where the product goes. That's becoming one of the biggest issues that we encounter, especially in US or Taiwan.
Dimitri en a parlé, la confiance est...
So Dimitri mentioned it, trust is key in today's topic, and this trust can be done with the security by design. So Thierry, what are the best practices to integrate cybersecurity from design? Wow, that's a tough question. First of all, you have to be aware of the projects that you can integrate by design. So it means building relays with plants. Globally, we have at Sanofi, we have part of the projects and systems that are designed and developed in the nuclear plants with what we call the global engineering teams and the digital manufacturing and supply teams. We are aware, we know them. So it goes well. So there's always things to improve, but where it's more complicated is at the plant, they all have their P&L with a clear objective in terms of optimizing performance. And so there's a lot of suppliers that come to see us to select services and products and implement them. But unfortunately, it's not always by design in terms of cyber with the associated risks. So we have to have the relays and capture them. So we developed, I think it's an important element, our ability to be very close to the industrial sites to capture this. And I believe we also need to be able to be supported by approaches and frameworks that are established, on which we have been working for years and years, and for which we involve all players. The strong collaboration between the teams and business, engineering, automation, quality. So quality for us, we have a highly regulated environment, so it's very important. And for us, this is a second dimension. Bringing this framework, that means that we can have systems that are robust enough and, as we said before, well designed.
Security by design,
Well, security by design in terms of tools, as you said, actually it's close to the sites. So when you have humans on sites, for example, solar farms where we don't have people, so we have to think about visiting sites where there's nobody. The essential is to be listening to use cases, because the IoT is revolutionizing our plants. Also, not about Pierre-Marie, but I think you as well. And it's very easy to find a SME who says, I'm going to make you sensors and all that. It's fantastic, but you have to frame these use. The essential what we've done is to try and find use cases that come bottom up. We don't find them in cyber, but try and find ways to secure these use cases and have this catalog of use cases either with qualified vendors, because sometimes the vendor is important, sometimes to say you only take LoRa and you don't take anything else from IoT, and make sure that these use cases are a living thing and we have an echo on their lives. See, it doesn't work. In terms of 5G, for example, it's easy to say, oh, let's go and see such a country in Africa, in Asia, in South America. A local supplier is going to do, and then a 4G network. It's not like a LAN. You have some legal obligations, you need some technical obligations, a lot of scenarios to go with it. So be listening and validate use cases, listening to the business. When they need to do that, we have to find a technical solution. And then disseminate these use cases to make sure that everyone knows, and then we need 10 others because it's evolving. Dimitri?
Yes, I think there's a very interesting financial incentive for doing it right the first way, because if you need to do the rework after, you have to fix it, there's a lot of money wasted. So doing it right is, by design or by default, saves a lot of money. So there's a financial incentive. But the other thing I would like to say is that I said we are driving trains for 200 years, and in England, when the first passenger train was riding, it was in 1830. On the same day, the first train was driving, someone died. And so, unfortunately, but that's also the day that safety in the railway sector started. And for railway, we have 10 safety domains. Cyber is the number 10. And we are looking heavily to our other peers within the organization for railway safety, for rolling stock safety, food and beverage safety, you name it, the other 9. And we can learn a lot from their approach and how did they get their safety approaches in the DNA of the company. So we are learning from the other safety domains as well to embed our cybersecurity frameworks and the culture within the organization by learning from the other older safety domains.
To us, so we're doing semiconductors.
Donc en fait, on fait des semi-conducteurs au niveau IP.
Design, we are at the very front part. So the importance to tell the customer how important that is definitely coming out down from the end of the ecosystem. So we spend a lot of time to describe to them, but definitely there are so many incidents recently, like for the hacking, so it gets easier to talk about the design in. So so that's why from our point of view is the design for cybersecurity needs to definitely, like everybody said, that we have to prepare it and design at the beginning, and that's what we do the most of work. But at the same time, we also realize for SMEs, it's hard for them to plan a huge budget on these topics or these protections. So that's why we also needs everybody's help to be able to provide solutions at the application side. So like from either through a dongle or through Ethernet connections, for example. So it depends on the applications a lot. So from our side, we do see various topics and various chances to be able to design the product in.
Pierre-Marie, vous vouliez ajouter un mot?
Pierre-Marie, you wanted to say something? Well, cybersecurity by design, as you mentioned it, from experience at Framatome, we've taken into account in the engineering phases, in the project phases. So in the project, there is an engineering of requirements cybersecurity. You have to find the right skills to take them into account to the V cycle, transfer to the user authorities, either doing specification, how to properly specify them, up to the VNV phase,
systématisation des audits,
with
etc.
systemizing
Donc,
the
sur la partie
audits and
gestion
so
de
on.
projet et sur la partie
So from
ingénierie également,
project management, also
notamment
from
sur les phases
engineering,
de durcissement des
especially
systèmes,
in the
surtout dans des systèmes
phases of
OT à
hardening
forte
the system,
contrainte
especially the
importante
OTs
de
systems
safety,
with
où,
great safety
on fait pas ce
challenges,
qu'on veut avec,
where we
avec la
don't
cybersécurité,
do
on peut
what
arriver
we
avec une
like with
couche de
cybersecurity.
cybersécurité qui
We
va
cannot have a
pouvoir
layer of
contredire, en fait,
cybersecurity
les
that
exigences
will
de sécurité qui
contradict
prévalent.
some safety
Et donc,
requirements
dans certains cas,
that
la seule
prevail.
chose qu'on peut faire,
So in
entre
certain
guillemets, c'est
cases, the only thing we can do
durcir les
is
systèmes. Et là-dessus,
make
on a
the
développé
systems
une
harder,
pratique, assez,
and we have
en
developed
toute
a
humilité assez experte
rather
sur
expert
le
practice
sujet,
on this topic.
et qu'on retrouve là aussi
And
encore,
we
tout
also
le long
have
du cycle en V.
that
On va
all
bientôt
along
prendre
the V
les
cycle.
questions du
We're
public,
just
mais
about to
finalement,
take
si je
questions
résume,
from
les
the
enjeux, c'est
public
de
before I
savoir
wanted
quels sont
to
les leviers
summarize
on peut
the challenges. What are the
activer
levers we
pour
can
transformer
that
la
we can activate
cybersécurité
to
en une
transform
culture partagée,
cybersecurity
non
into
comme
a shared
une
culture
contrainte imposée,
and not
et
a
on
constraint?
tombe effectivement sur notamment par exemple la
And this is
réglementation.
where we have the regulation.
Thierry
Thierry, maybe?
Alors, déjà, ça
Well,
reprend un petit peu ce qu'on a dit.
first
enfin,
of all,
pour-
it's
pour,
actually
vraiment,
in line with
avoir
what
une
we said,
démarche
to
de
really
culture,
have
qui est
a
partagée. Encore une
culture,
fois, on
shared
l'a dit, il faut
culture
être proche des
approach. You have to
métiers.
be close to the business.
Il faut être
You
enabler,
have to
c'est-à-dire
be enablers.
par défaut, j'allais dire, ton sujet m'intéresse. Alors, il faut challenger. Enfin, quand on
By
parle de-
default, your topic
petite,
interests
petite
me, and
parenthèse, quand on
just
parle d'accompagner le
as a
business,
side
être
comment,
proche
when
du
you
business,
support the
etc., ça veut dire,
business, it
accepter
doesn't mean
tout
that
ce
we
qu'ils
have to accept everything they
déjà,
ask
ça veut
for.
dire challenger le
It
use
means
case.
challenge
Moi,
the
mon
use
équipe, elle est,
cases. My
en
team
capacité de dire à un moment
is in a
donné,
capacity to say at
ton
one
use case,
point,
il est pas
your
pertinent,
use
alors,
case
c'est pas
is not
cyber.
relevant.
Je
It's not
considère qu'il n'est
cyber.
pas pertinent.
I
parce qu'il
consider
est
it's
trop
not
local,
relevant
il y a
because
pas de
it's too
stratégie,
local, you
de
don't have a
standardisation
standardization
quelque part de ces
strategy
use cases sur
in
l'ensemble
this
du
use
tissu
case for the
industriel
whole
et
of
développement
the
d'usine. On
industry
fait pas un
aspect,
projet
so we
avec un
don't
système avec une
have a
nouvelle
project
application
with a
locale
system,
sur
a
une
new
usine,
app,
sauf s'il y a vraiment un
unless
besoin très
local,
spécifique. Et la
unless you have a
stratégie est
specific
de
requirement. But the
standardiser.
strategy
Ça
is
veut
to
dire,
standardize.
s'il n'y a pas ces
So,
conditions-là,
if we don't have
c'est pas
these
la peine d'aller
conditions, it's not
dépenser de l'énergie,
worth
de l'argent
spending
pour
energy
essayer de
and
sécuriser
money to
quelque chose
try and
qui va
secure
rester
something that is
local,
going
qui
to
va,
remain local
finalement apporter peu de
and
valeur.
is
Donc,
going to
c'est
provide
déjà,
little
quand on parle de
value.
proche du business
So when you
et
mean
accompagner
being
le
close to the
être un enabler,
business,
ça veut
be
déjà
an
dire de
enabler,
challenger
this means that you have
positivement
to
le business.
positively
Puis après,
challenge
c'est
the
mettre toutes les
business.
conditions
And then
pour
putting
dire,
the
on va y arriver.
conditions
Dès lors qu'on
to
est,
say
on est
that
OK sur la valeur que va apporter
as soon as we are
tel
okay for
système,
the
telle
value of the
application,
system,
tel use
such
case, à ce
a use
moment-là,
case in
on
that
se dit tous
case,
ensemble,
we
on va
all say
trouver des
together
solutions.
we're
Et
going
c'est
to
comme
find
ça que la
solutions.
cyber
And this is how
apporte un
cyber
catalyseur de, finalement,
provides
d'innovation
is
et
a
de
catalyzer of
performance. Et
innovation and
finalement,
performance, because
notre objectif,
our
il est
objective
ensemble, avec le
is
business,
together
avec l'ensemble
with
des
the
acteurs,
business,
de
with all the
trouver les
players,
solutions. Et il
to
y a toujours
find
des
the
solutions.
solutions.
On
And
a-
there
on a
are
des
always
cas
solutions.
d'usage où
We have
finalement,
use
c'était
cases
dit,
where
il y a peut-être
we
quelques
said
années,
that
hors de
a couple of
question,
years ago
impossible
that it's out of
d'ouvrir
the
tel
question,
réseau,
we
tel
cannot
ou tel
open
système.
such a network and
Et on
so
voit
on.
qu'il y a quand même
And
des
we can see there's
technologies,
still
alors c'est pas
there's
qu'une
still some
question de
technology.
des
It's not
technologies
only
qui
technology,
permettent
but
aussi,
technologies that
à un moment donné, de
allow
faire
at
communiquer
one
des
point
systèmes,
to
de
have
transférer
systems
des données.
communicating,
On a parlé beaucoup de
transfer
données.
data,
Bon, ben
talk
ça,
about
c'est
the data.
aussi la cyber qui
That's
l'amène,
also
parce qu'elle est suffisamment
cyber
ouverte,
providing it
mais
because it's open enough.
avec ce que
But
j'insiste, des
as I
prérequis
said, some
qui font qu'on va pas les
prerequisites
travailler
that
sur
make
tout et
it that we're not
n'importe
going
quoi,
to
parce
work
que,
on
il
it
y a un patron d'usine
in
qui a
everywhere
envie de faire
because
joujou avec avec telle ou telle
factory
innovation. Donc, c'est vraiment
director
important
wants to
de-
play with
de
an
bien,
innovation.
porter
So
la
it's
valeur
very
au bon endroit.
important to put the value at the right
Je suis pas
place.
en état de juger la valeur de.
Now, I'm not in a position to judge the value of the business.
D'accompagner des métiers, mais
I can
commencer à
support
dire
the business, but
toutes
trying
les
to say
usines sont à peu près une
all
raffinerie A,
our
alors que les se ressemblent pas du tout.
our refineries don't look like one another. We have no standardized. We meet the international standards because it's quite old and sound. We don't have the possibility. I don't want to say to a store director, I'm not going to make enough money with that, so
Non, mais excuse-moi de te couper, c'est juste
sorry
que
to cut
déjà
you,
poser
but
la question.
it's
Ah oui, non,
asking
mais
the
après,
question.
Challenger, non, mais
Not
déjà poser la
challenging,
question.
already
Évidemment,
asking
c'est
the
pas,
question. Of
mon
course,
job,
it's
c'est
not
pas de
my job
demander
either
la valeur
to
mais c'est poser la
value,
question
but at
et
least
surtout
ask the
vérifier
question
que ce qui va
and
être mis en
check that
place
what
est
is
bien quelque
implemented
chose qui
is
s'inscrit
actually
dans une
something
démarche.
that is within a global approach. Now, what we try and do in securing is to provide the culture. I've put the lanyard today, but we have cyber and safety. At Total Energy, the safety is a value. You cannot compromise on safety. It's impossible. So from the moment that we are in a safety approach, we can bring the brains of 700 sites, I would say this is safety. We ensure the safety of the company, and it's done through the culture, from the managers, not just from the fact that it's a standard. You have legal takes, you have our PSSRs, they try and reduce them, that are so heavy and reviewed by dozens of auditors. Now, what's most important is to create a culture in the decision maker's head to say, I will not do anything because I know there is a safety challenge. Who would like to? Dimitri, anybody? John?
Yeah, so we're talking about the culture. Also, many times we're talking about the industries, right? So, as Taiwan is now more closing on the manufacturing sides or the design part, since we're more focusing on these sections, so sometimes the end customer problem, it's not really affecting us, and that causes results. People just want to save money because that also it's the characteristic of the industry. However, so now through what we discussed first about the regulations and push that, so that sort of force all the industry have to embed those cybersecurity concepts into the chips, and that's where that make us, I think, starting to transform a lot of from the beginning. So when we're talking about the culture, so for one of the incidents, it's back a few years ago. There was a hacking, so all the TVs in the train station were hacked, and that was because the back door is open. So since after that, the government were very panic about it, and they have to now delivering a lot of things like make locally and all these, starting even from this. So cybersecurity now is becoming one of the hottest and focused topic. So that's something come from the culture and sort of change between these years.
Yeah, I think sometimes we try to to make it too complex, because bringing value to the business is usually something that a customer is trying to pay for something, and cyber is just a hygiene factor. In many ways, it's just doing your grinding and making sure the things that are being developed properly. So, I mean, the examples are all around us. You can have a hypothetical or academic discussion about the value that you're bringing, but if you are collecting all the examples, for example, for us, for railway, there's hundreds of examples where railways were hacked, couldn't drive, were DDoSed. I mean, just look at the examples and calculate the cost of being down. It's simple as that. So we should not make it too complex as well. And just look at the examples around you and do your basic hygiene. That's the value that you bring to the business.
Bien. Pierre-Marie?
Oui, vous parliez de culture de sécurité que pouvait amener éventuellement.
You were talking about the safety rules, security rules about the regulation, the structures the market we're in, and it shows that on the French or European scales, we have a market that,
et une confiance qu'on peut avoir dans la tech,
and the trust you have in the tech in our industry, but it doesn't answer all the threats. So it's great to have a generic approach, but we have to go much further than that in the companies we work in to have a more risk-based approach, and this is why we have to use our brain juice to anticipate the threats, and it's quite clear of that. Another aspect I wanted to underline is this concept of culture and maturity in cybersecurity is the fact that it's not tech-centered only. So I think there's innovation to be made in the organizations as such. That could be a vector performance. And just took my mind that the attack on North Kidro in 2019, there was a real performance in the crisis management, and it was actually saluted by the community because there was innovation in communication, transparency. They were really proactive in communication, and this is a really specific case. And we also worked it, as you can see, Quentin with SNCF and RTP, we started working with the crisis management, not just at the scale of the company, but working with insurers, service providers, the authorities, and so on. So we can find innovation in the human organizations to provide performance. Just to complement what you said, and we often talk about the convergence between IT and OT, the crisis management is one of the key elements of convergence, and especially one that allows us to learn from the industrial world. We go from the IT to OT, but we don't talk about the OT towards the IT, especially in terms of crisis management. I can tell you that the teams on industrial sites are in a better position to manage crisis, and they manage a lot of crisis compared to the IT teams. So it's also one way of providing value in both directions. So, do we have questions for our panel members? Yes, gentlemen.
Bonjour à tous. Ma question s'adresse plutôt à Monsieur Mansour.
Good afternoon,
Vous avez des approches
everyone. For Mr. Mansour Nolé, you have a similar approaches. La question was, with the current dangers for cybersecurity,
la posture que vous
and
cherchez
the
à avoir
posture
aussi,
that you try to have
Total Energy, en mettant
within
bien sûr l'accent
Total
sur le safety,
Energy and also
difficile
putting emphasis on safety, is it difficult for the cybersecurity division to face the business to provide a more safety-oriented? It's a very difficult. It's a very difficult job. I can't do it. But yes, it's we are part of a group, so we have to work on the managerial group with these people. So there must be speaking of peer-to-peer, saying it's a super tech that's completely out of this world, or someone checking my compliance with the ticking boxes. So it's the capacity to fit into the culture of the company. And I have young people who would like to hack whatever they find, and you have to teach them when you come to this company, we're not necessarily talking about the NTDS.dit is a great file, but nobody knows it apart from us. So we have to teach them the way we have to educate our young people to keep them close to the business and keeping them this great expertise that makes us different. As you associated Total, you can be a joint venture. It could be an idea. No, what I'm saying is that it's never simple. It's complicated. We managed to do it, as you said, Jean-Dominique, is that from the moment that the business understands what we want to do, we have no dogmatic approach. We have no regulated, purely regulated approach. We're not here to tick boxes. We are talking about operational cybersecurity. We have a business value chain approach, as I explained earlier, that speaks to the business. And when we present a risk approach on the value chain, they understand it. I mean, they're not stupid, you know? So they can see what is the challenge, they see what is the challenge of stopping for hours or manufacturing Pixent, which brings in millions of dollars every year. So you have to explain that to the business in a clever way with their own language, and the cyber KPIs, they don't understand it. This is not how you're going to make them make decisions in terms of investments, for example. So it's complicated, yes it is, but we have to manage and explain to the business the challenges and how we meet these challenges, and when we speak the right languages. Risk always is self-explanatory. Maybe another question? You can ask questions even if you are further down the room. Okay, talking of ticking boxes, how can we improve, for example, the NIS directives? So there's a bridge between the politicians who set rules and the industry. So we're not just ticking boxes. So the regulation lovers will let you answer that. Okay. regulation
J'ai pas
for...
vu ça, mais
No,
en
I
tout
haven't
cas,
seen them. I
c'est
don't know
sûr
where they
qu'on
are. No.
on n'a pas le choix de toute façon.
We have no
On est
choice.
obligé de répondre à un certain
We have
nombre
no choice. We have to meet
de
a
critères
number
et
of
on le fait,
criteria,
et ça améliore
and we
la
do.
confiance dans nos produits.
Improves
Et
the
aussi,
trust
ça
in our
permet
products,
d'avoir,
also
de parler le même
helping
langage.
us speaking the same language.
Donc, au moins quand on
So
parle
when we
de
talk
certaines normes, que
about
ce soit des textes
certain
réglementaires comme la
standards,
NIS2, ou d'autres
regulations like
françaises, type
NIS2
programmation militaire,
or the
au moins on parle un même
military
langage dans un autre
programmation
secteur,
law in France,
dans un autre
we
critère.
speak the same language in the same industry,
C'est la même chose
along
si
the
on
same
élargit un
criteria.
peu le champ
If
sur
you
le domaine
widen it
normatif,
to the
sur les
standard
443,
world,
les
the
normes,
62443,
sans doute,
the
cybersécurité
industrial
industrielle,
cybersecurity,
nucléaire et autres.
and
Donc
then
là-dessus, au moins,
similar
on peut pas
laws
les
for
énumérer, il y en a
nuclear.
plein,
There are
mais au
many
moins, l'avantage qu'on a,
standards, but at least the benefit we have,
moi,
the
je
advantage
constate
we
qu'on
have,
a des clients
and I
partout
can
dans
see
le monde,
that when we have
parlent la même langue.
customers everywhere in the world, we
Alors,
speak the
monsieur,
same language.
oui, j'arrive.
Yes, so let me come to you.
Messieurs, bonjour. Déjà, merci, c'était très intéressant.
Good afternoon. That was a very interesting. Thank you. We're talking about regulation. The fact that we have regulations for many of your sectors, NIS2 or whatever, impact your industries in general. Isn't it the right time to emphasize those innovative ideas that are often rejected by the business or other elements for budget reasons, because it's very often expensive to redeploy security safety elements? The sector in general is impacted by NIS2, implementing some security measures. Isn't it a right opportunity in your sectors, in your industries, to present the business? I mean, our competitors will have to catch up with us or implement safety and security measures when it pushed innovation then. Honestly, if you wait for the regulations in our industry, that would be a serious case. I mean, we cannot wait for regulation. We will comply with it, obviously, but use that to say, look, yeah, you've got NIS2, before you could have done that, but now with NIS2 you cannot do it. No, we're not credible. If I have this kind of statement, innovation is when there is a risk, and that talks to people. Then you take people, there is NIS2, you have some conferences on NIS2, that they're going to tell us NIS2 is a non-event or whatever, but honestly, I'm not talking in the military programmation. NIS2 is for cyber security, mass cyber security, and our friends from Holland as well. They should have set up their cybersecurity to a certain level that puts them in compliance with NIS2. I totally share this opinion. We are not relying on NIS2 to implement some innovation, whatever they are. We cannot say that NIS2 is a positive vector in terms of innovation. It's just like any regulation, and especially in NIS2, as you are all facing it. If you look at the European countries, not one translates it in the same way, so it's a true challenge. We are an international company between Hungary, Spain, Belgium, and then France and Germany. It's got nothing to do one with the other. It's supposed to be harmonized, but the translation to national law is difficult. For large groups like us, like Dominic said, of course, we have not waited for the regulation to have an approach and a strategy and rolling out operational safety. Of course, we have to do it because we have threats. We also have a regulation for the pharmaceutical divisions. We have some link with cybersecurity. We have no choice because otherwise we cannot produce products, so it's very important for business. It's more interesting actually to make the link between the business regulation and what we want to implement. And I can tell you that I've pushed for many years, especially at the beginning, on the data integrity and the JXP pharmaceutical regulation to have EDRs and antivirus on industrial equipment. It would have been more difficult if I had taken the data integrity, but it's not the cyber regulation, it's the business regulation. Dimitri?
I think NIS2 never was built to speed up innovation. So the question is a bit strange, and I think it's about time that we got NIS2. It's about time that we got DORA, because one after the other critical infrastructure is being hacked, is being ransomware. So we need to step up the game, because otherwise we will be in big problems as a society. What the other thing is, the other side of your question is, does it really hinder the innovation? Yes, it does. And a lot of SME companies are really struggling with all the cyber laws that are coming and are being developed in Europe. I think for our railway organization, we have 12 cyber laws. Now, I have a very big department, not so big as Quentin, but we are managing all the cyber laws. But for the SME companies, it's very difficult, and we see a lot of SMEs not being innovative enough. So it's an extremely difficult situation. With that, I agree.
Alors, pour votre information, c'est la table ronde juste après. On va parler de NIS2. Et,
For your information, the next roundtable will be about NIS2. It's a great introduction. Yes, thank you for that. Do we have a question in the audience? Okay, at the top, let me come to you then.
Également, merci pour la conversation.
Well, thank you for this conversation. I'm from Trust Matters. I'm going to ask the question in English.
Is it really necessary to comply to all the rules relative to a compliance scheme? Or can it be that for your own organization you have been able to calculate that certain measures make sense and others not within your risk profile? Does that make sense? Is that a way to go?
Ouais, enfin, malheureusement, la réglementation.
Unfortunately, the regulation, it's a good question, but the regulation is not made like that. There is a dimension in regulation. I don't want to spoil the next roundtable, but that takes the risk into account. And the recommendations are risk-based. Now, starting to measure exactly the value of the risk, it's only the company can see the risk. I mean, let's be honest, we have the network code that is coming for those with electricity, and each time we have really different papers to fill in. But just for the materialization of this calculation, it is something that could be interesting. Unfortunately, it's not the approach that is taken, and that would be complicated to check for a state to control the role. That's the thing.
Autre question?
More questions?
A priori, plus de questions. Merci, messieurs.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. A round of applause.